All right, here we go. I'll let them in 3, 2, and 1. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. If you're just coming into the space here, we just wrapped up a Writer's Hour writing session, but now we are here to do a special Q&A. We have a special guest with us. We have Claire Venus, and occasionally we keep this room open and after our Writer's Hours to bring friends in who help writers. And if you've never heard of us and have never been to any event with us here at London Writers Salon, my name is Matt. I'm one of the co-founders here, and we do all sorts of things to help writers like you write more with more success, whatever that means to you. And so we host daily Writers Hour writing sessions, and we also host interviews, Q&As, and workshops to help you deepen and further your craft. And so today we have a very special guest. We have Claire Venus here with us in the room. So hello, Claire. Thanks again.
Hi, Matt. Hi, everyone. It's so lovely to be here.
So a bit about Claire and a bit about this session. So for the next hour or so, I'm going to have a little chat with Claire. We're going to talk about what it takes to build a world-class Substack. Claire has that experience herself, and also she helps a bunch of writers do that the same thing. So I've prepared a bunch of questions for Claire, but about maybe 30, 40 minutes in, we will turn it over to audience questions. So if you have a question at any point throughout this, you're welcome to just pop it into the chat. So a bit about Claire. Some of you might be huge fans of Claire, and that's why you're here, but some of you might not know of Claire. So Claire Venus is an engagement consultant and mentor who helps creatives and businesses ignite their content ecosystem and grow their businesses using Substack. So Claire runs the popular Sparkle on Substack newsletter, where she helps thousands of writers stay creative on Substack. Claire is also the co-author of How to Build a World-Class Substack, which we're just 4 days left. There it is. It's beautiful. 4 days left in the Kickstarter, which is already raised over $14,000. This is amazing. I can't wait to talk about this as well, in addition to Substack. But yeah, so we got some questions, and I've prepared some, and then we'll hand it over to you. Welcome back again, Claire. And maybe I thought before we kick off, I know we've got a lot of people here in the room. I am curious, and maybe this will help steer the conversation a little bit. Everyone here, let us know in the chat, what's your relationship to Substack? Where are you on your Substack journey? Have you already launched and you're writing on a Substack, or maybe you're just Substack curious, or maybe you don't even know what we're talking about and you're like, what is Substack? Let us know in the chat. And as those are coming in, Claire, I wonder if you could give us a little bit of your origin story. So you're a big role model for a lot of people who either want to start their Substack journey or are already on it. Where did your Substack journey start?
No, thank you. I'm just watching them all flash up, and I'll get overwhelmed if I click the chat, but it's lovely to
Yeah.
just connect you all and just know that you're all in your different journeys with Substack. So I started writing on Substack in April 2022. I started a publication that is the same name as my business. So it's called Creatively Conscious. And over there, it was really just okay, let's do some long form writing. I was pretty burnt out with my career. I was pretty burnt out with social media, and it felt like such a spacious place to spend time. There weren't many UK authors on there at that time. So for me, it was really lovely to just connect to people internationally and just to kind of build friendships and kinships, really colleagueships. And my writing for me really at that time was kind of memoir style. There was a little bit of blog style content in there because I'd really fallen out with my website. I had a WordPress website, and every time I tried to write a blog on there, it would just kind of break and the formatting would be off and the images would, it was just a headache. So Substack was really easy. And obviously, you know, when we're starting with a new platform, we don't know a huge amount about how that relationship is going to be. So it's a little bit of testing the water. It was before the notes feed existed. So they introduced notes a year later in April 2023. And so I had a whole year of building community in the comments, right? So we have the opportunity to invite comments or to turn them off, and mine were always on. So I was really getting a sense of who was reading my work, and I was popping over and reading lots of other people's work as well. It made sense for me to turn on the paid opportunity from the off. And so there are various different ways with this. There are various different relationships that we might feel to a paywall or to paywall in posts, you know, however we set that up, whatever our strategy is. But for me, I just wanted to be open to it. I just thought, you know what, I'll set it at the rate that Substack kind of advise, and we'll just go with that. And 3 people paid straight away. So that was super interesting because I hadn't really done much. I'd started writing there. I'd written some pieces. I hadn't paywalled anything. I'd just started writing a newsletter, a blog, some long form pieces. And then there was this dance of co-creation. So more people would come, free readers, and there would be this kind of bubbling up of, I'm really interested in your life. What's your life like on the Northumberland coast? What does it mean to be a creative producer for work? What does an engagement consultant do? And so I was really in this dance with my audience and just kind of writing for them, but also giving myself that space to be more vulnerable behind the paywall because it was a smaller audience, right? So rather than feeling like I've written something and the whole world or the whole internet might see it, it was like, no, it's just this kind of collection of people who are really invested in the work that I do in the world and very supportive of who I am as a creative and as a mother. My daughter was very young at the time, so I was really curious about what this could become in my business ecosystem, but I was very busy with my daughter. She was very, very young and full on. So I was just kind of nudging myself in the direction of encouraging others, that kind of, well, I'm doing this and you could do this. And nobody's heard of Substack in the UK. It just blew my mind. So when I was kind of considering, okay, what could this be for people? What could this be for a person? What could this platform be? We can have free podcast hosting. We can paywall our work. We can blog if we want to blog. We can find our voice. We can find an audience for our work. And also there was this kind of sophisticated level of exchange going on where people seemed just deeply curious and invested. It felt like people had time for the first time. And I know that, there's been complaints over the years of how fast-paced platforms like Instagram have become, or people not being able to find their way with TikTok. I'm neurodivergent, and I think for me, having somewhere that just felt very clean and clear was just a true gift for my creativity. So fast forward a little ways on, and I started writing these Stay Creative on Substack posts, and they were a real invitation. They were free for everyone, and they were just going pretty viral, not viral as in tens of thousands of views, but viral for me. So my nervous system was like gearing up, like, oh, this is something people want, right? And everybody was very supportive, very complimentary. When Notes kicked in, people were sharing my posts within the Notes network. And I just had this deep knowing that there was more that I needed to do with this message. There was more of that Stay Creative on Substack, joyful, sustainable growth. We've got this on our terms at our pace. We don't have to be influenced by external vanity metrics or anything really. We can just work it through ourselves. So I made a new publication called Sparkle on Substack that was from the off a membership, so it's a space that people can learn from me either as readers for free, or they can join video classes with me. And I publish kind of behind the scenes of how things work with all my different experiments that I do. It's very open. So writers are there for sure, authors are there for sure, but there are also the creatives that are kind of going, I think I've got a voice. I think there's something that I want to say, but I'm nervous. People that have been burned, or people that have experienced things on social media that have kind of made them tentative about whether it's safe to share what they want to share. So there's a whole mix of people there, and that's been going just about a year. And I think that is kind of the Substack journey. I mean, there's other things happened within that, especially recently. We hosted this whole big summit recently called the Sparkle Summit, Substack Meets Publishing, which was just an awesome thing to do. And it was the most tiring thing I've ever done in my life. It was amazing, but the internet is wild. So that's been all hosted on Substack as well. So for me, it gets really exciting when I think about what Substack can become for the individual, right? For the person who has a unique creative ecosystem, a unique way with creativity. And I get really passionate about supporting that rather than saying, this is a blueprint, this is how you box yourself in and do Substack well. So that's me.
Wow. I could not tell. You probably haven't been telling your story at all over the next month. This is so good. You nailed it, Claire. What I really like about your story, and this is actually leading to, so you said a lot, which I'll dig deeper because I think people have questions on this. And one of them is about getting started. And what I really like about your story is that you started on one Substack, but actually Sparkle on Substack came out of that and starting that, which leads me to one of my questions. A lot of people, how important do you feel a clear vision or mission for the Substack is from the beginning? You obviously have two, one where you were kind of exploring as you went, and then one that's very clear. This is what it's about. I wonder if someone's coming to you, a lot of people in this room are Substack curious. How important is that clear vision, what this thing's about?
Yeah, I think It's really interesting because we all have different tolerance levels when it comes to influence, right? So I'll have people that sign up to Sparkle, but they also sign up to other Substack educators. And then they tell me I'm really overwhelmed. I'm like, well, you will be. Like, just pick one. So me and another Substack educator that I'm a colleague with were like, just pick one space to learn the platform and then lean into what you want from the platform. What do you want it to be? People also have blocks around kind of setting it up properly. And really, all of that can come, right? The important thing is just coming to the page and writing something, because then you get into this relationship with what you want your writing there to be. So some people will work, for weeks on a personal essay. For other people, it's more journalistic content and it'll go out every few days and it's relatively short and snappy. Other people want to get really into kind of what the photography part of it can be. Others are kind of doing video there now and podcasts. So again, that's why it comes back to the ecosystem. It's like, where does it fit? If you have never written a newsletter before and you want to do that and you want to build up that audience rapport and you want to build up fans and people that might be interested in your work off platform or buying your books or whatever, then that's a great place to just kind of go, okay, it's my newsletter and that's it. And of course it can morph and it could be other things as well. But I think knowing where it fits in your ecosystem is the first step. And then in terms of that vision, I think being really cautious about how much other stuff you read and what you are influenced by on the platform, because the imposter syndrome can just creep in and then we end up just with stage fright, right? So when I first started, I was reading authors that were very different to me. I didn't really find anybody that was in my like niche as it was. It was just people that I was really curious about in terms of the work that they were doing in the world and the writing they were doing in the world. And I had these reading slots. So I was an avid reader, I was on there reading all the time. When I was feeding my daughter in the evenings, I felt like it was a whole portal, like a library, of wonderful, wonderful people. And I didn't push myself to kind of like or comment on any of those posts. It's a different strand, that's community building. So allowing yourself to just immerse in readership and being a reader is a really nice thing, but you've got to kind of strike that balance if you also want to show up and write, I think. So yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I think you've hit on two things. And oftentimes when people ask us and around this, it's if your goal is to just explore your writing, like don't think too much about it. Just start it and start exploring. Or if you're really clear about who you're serving and what you're doing, go and do that. But it's like when these two things get muddied, it can get confusing. So I like you kind of did both of those. Um, I wonder, for you and your audience growth, was there a sea change moment where, you know, uh, you got a bunch of subscribers, and if so, can you tell us about that moment, or was it more of a gradual compounded over time?
Yeah, and I think it's a really good question because there can be some negativity around, well, it's okay for you, you're teaching about Substack on Substack, so you're bound to have a big audience. But it's definitely not just that. On Creatively Conscious, I write to over 3,000 people now. It blows my mind. That blows my mind. It's incredible. And I don't talk about Substack education there. That is the work that I wanted to show up and write about for the paid subscribers that I have there. That there's more of a membership feel there now, but again, that's morphed over time as I've had more time to give to that. So yeah, I think that when I started talking about how to be creative in the world, right, which is my passion, that just comes out in my writing. It's like those pieces that you sit down and you think, oh, okay, like I'm going to go with this. And then before you know it, you're almost pressing send before you're ready to press send. So it's like the energy is bigger than me. So the pieces where it feels like that, they always do well. And then the rest has been, I've never been featured by Substack. So a lot of writers, that's one of their goals, right? Because if you're featured by Substack, you're going to get that kudos. You can use a special badge on your publication and your about page. And you're also going to drive at least 300 subs, but more likely 1,000 new subs just through that feature. So in a way, there's that kind of in the back of my mind, like, oh, is that a bit of imposter syndrome in me? Like I'm doing all of this work and all these people are coming, but Substack haven't given me a stamp of approval. It's bonkers. But it's this stance of kind of going, I'm genuinely growing in a way where my nervous system can handle it. Like now having 11,000 readers across my publications, it's a lot. If that would have happened earlier on, I don't know what I would have done. I would have needed some professional coaching, some professional support. It can be a lot for us. So for me, my aim was always to just kind of show up, write the things that I want to write, have this kind of co-creation with my audience. So they sometimes will vote on what they want to hear about and that sort of thing. And then just kind of, yeah, let it build over time. There are various different ways to grow within the Substack network, which obviously I've learned about, which actually they want because they get paid if we get paid. So Substack take 10% of anything that we bring in terms of paid subscriptions, whether that's annual, monthly, or founding membership. So Substack do support us on the platform to grow. The biggest thing that I think has enabled my growth on the platform is clarity. So being really clear about who I am, what I offer, what I write, the cadence of it all. There's quite a lot of kind of, while we're figuring that out, you've got to take your readers with you, because if they are expecting you to write to them and then you don't feel like it or something happens, there's a relationship breakdown there, and people don't realize that, but they are really invested. People read everything. Some people read everything, there's a skim reading, but it's a relationship as soon as that person's hit the subscribe button. So we've got to be really precious with someone's time. They're giving us out their time and attention. So I really feel for everybody that comes in, whether that's a free reader or a paid subscriber, like I connect to that and I'm like, wow, like another person has come into the space, and it's a community space now as well as it is me hosting it. So I don't know whether that
Yeah.
directly answers your question, but I feel like for me, that through line of joyful, sustainable growth is I know Substack are going to support me. So I keep showing up and doing the things, and the things work, and incrementally the subs go up.
That's great. Yeah, we'll definitely have some questions around community building. I wonder if we circle back to your book, though. There's 4 days left on the Kickstarter. I think maybe you could show it, flash it up
Yes.
again.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Yeah, what can people? I mean, wow, it looks like basically the textbook that we all need to start a Substack. Can you give us maybe a brief overview of what's in it, and also why turn your hand at putting this into a book versus just keeping it on your Substack?
Yeah, and so it was all my co-author Russell. So I co-authored this with Russell Nolte, and he is amazing with Kickstarter. So he has crowdfunded over 50 books. He writes fiction,
Wow.
and he also writes the non-fiction sort of businessy type books. So he's over on the author stack on Substack if you want to look him up, and he runs various different companies in the US. All, really about author growth and author support. So Russell and I met in the early days of Notes. I really liked what he was about, very, very different to me, but also there was a synergy in what we were saying. So there was a kind of a connection point. So Russell contacted me in February this year and said, I want to write a Substack book. Do you want to write it with me? My business partner was going to write it, but she's busy. What do you think? And I was so flattered. I mean, it was so amazing to be asked, hey, do you want to do this with me? We'd worked together a little bit before. Russell had hired me as his engagement consultant. We'd podcasted together, but it just felt massive. It just felt like, wow, okay, let's do this. I had no idea how it was going to work. So when Russell, it's really smart, but when Russell writes his Substack posts, he's already thinking how we might be able to curate those and collate those into a book. And I did not know this was what was going on. So he's writing this really incredible, informative piece for either his free subscribers or his paid subscribers. But in the back of his mind, he's thinking, okay, this will fit this way in a book. So when he sent me the manuscript, it was already 60,000 words. I was like, well, Russell, you've written the book. So I don't really know, this is brilliant. This is your voice. This is everything I love about your Substack. Like, it's step by step. We can get lost in the detail with Russell. Like, he gives us it all. We need to highlight a pen and we need to cross stuff out. We need a notebook. Like, it's a lot. It gives us a lot. And so he was really interested in my take on what he'd written, given that I work with people, obviously, within my membership. I've got over 300 people in my membership. I've done a lot of one-to-ones. I've done a lot of Substack audits as well. So he was really interested in that take on what he had written in the book. And then the bits that I felt were missing, because he really doesn't like the community building element of online. Like, it's just not his thing. It's not what he's up for. So he wanted me to kind of plug in with that there. So it was really obvious to me after a little while of sitting with it that I didn't want to change anything about his tone of voice. I could definitely sign up to everything he was saying, because there's a lot within that that definitely people need to do, and it'll just help them. Yeah, it'll just stop them floundering around and just get everything set up, which is great. And then I wanted to bring in kind of the softer language around engagement, around using notes, some tips for that, around using recommendations, around building community, and around setting off on this adventure whereby, we've been creating online for a long time now. We've had at least a decade, most of us, where we've kind of figured out what it is, what blocks our voice, what enables our voice, what we want to do, what feels comfortable, what doesn't. And so I wanted to kind of speak to some of that sort of in the book. And so when I realized that, so we've got like a quick start guide in there, which is just a very breezy overview of this is what you might want to do to get set up. And then it goes into more detail. And then there's kind of my passion in there, which is for community building, really, and for helping people to kind of create publications that also feel like home, that feel like that place where they've got an identity of their own. So that's in there too. And I think when you have a physical book in your hand, there's just something different about that. Like I've done all the proofs, with this physical book. I tried online and I was like, actually, I'm just lost now. And I think we do get that reader fatigue, with reading online or with reading ebooks, whereas there's something about a physical book where it becomes our personal Bible. Like you say, it's like, okay, this is how I am going to build a world-class Substack. This is what Russell is saying. This is what Claire's saying. But between the lines, these are my ideas. And that's why I was really passionate about bringing this to life. Like you say, the Kickstarter has been amazing. But again, that is all Russell's strategy. That is what he does. He has a Kickstarter course for authors. He's done this lots of times before. And it was really great for me to kind of put my stamp on it, yes, but also just lean into trusting him and knowing that he knows what he's doing on Kickstarter, and this book was going to get funded and hopefully be able to kind of be shipped all over the world, which is definitely going to happen.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's amazing. All the people that have jumped in. It's still 4 days left, like I said. I wonder. So you mentioned one of the things that I think people struggle with, and I've struggled with this myself, is let's say you launch something. There's a lot of excitement as you start it. You're excited about it. You're interested in what you're writing about, but that agreement that you've made inadvertently or indirectly with a subscriber is that they're expecting you to write and you have to show up. How have you managed to keep up that cadence, consistently publishing, and how have, if you've struggled with that, how have you gotten past that?
Yeah, I feel like once I started Sparkle, it was my job, right? So it was like, this is my job now, So from the handful of the first few paid subscribers, it was my job. And then it's built, obviously, and now it's like a really healthy income. So I would say, well, it's been really interesting actually, because my commissioned work has shifted, and a lot of my commissions now are Substack orientated. So it's like, oh, a Substack is just my work now. So there's that piece of it where it's like I'm coming to do work. So it's not just, oh, I better sort of do a marketing post on social media. This is like, yeah, this is everything that I want to be doing. So there's that. And then there's the bits where people ask me, oh, how do you do this thing? And I'm genuinely passionate about teaching people. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a quick YouTube video, or I'll cover it in the membership, or here's a quick like 5 bullet point post. Like I would just really love doing that. So that's felt really easy. I always said to myself, okay, it's 2 classes a month, and then I've got the podcast as well. And then anything else will just be anything else that happens. Now that it's been a year, there's just so much in the archive. There's like nearly 300 posts in the archive. So if somebody comes to Sparkle, there's an A to Z. They can just navigate the bits that they need to find. There'll still always be things, there'll still always be questions. But I just wanted it to be a one-stop shop for people to kind of figure out what they wanted to do with their Substack. Anything that they were stuck on, they could find. And I've done that now. So it's been a massive push for this first year. And it's felt like, wow, like when I get to the end of this year, there'll be something. There'll be something spacious, and there'll be something that says, okay, you did it. You've done it now. And I definitely felt that. And I have felt that through the Kickstarter for this book. Like I felt that, like, I guess like at the edges of burnout, like showing up to promote a book, trying to have the kids on summer holiday and doing all the juggle, and then going, you know what, like I need to pull back. So I said to my members, I'm going offline other than marketing stuff for August. And I've just found a way that they feel held and looked after. And it's all been going really well. And it's meant that I can just have the slower days that I've needed to kind of recharge. I think that because you can schedule posts in advance, obviously we always have that opportunity. If you go onto Russell's dashboard, which I did when I was working with him, he had like 30 posts scheduled. I was just like, is this man a genius? Like, how does anybody schedule that much stuff? But that's how he works. With mine, there'll be nothing scheduled because it's in draft until I want to kind of get a hold of it and then plug it into the energy. So I think that it's the flow of my week and it works. And if something isn't working or if something crops up in our personal life or whatever else, I feel comfortable enough to say and to model, okay, like I'm going to have a bit of downtime. Other publication hosts would stop paid subscriptions or say, I'm leaving paid subscriptions on, but I'm going away for a month or I'll not be here for a couple of months. Like I've seen loads of authors do that. And I'm like, good on you. Like we're not paying a subscription fee for 24/7 access to them. That's not what this is at all. It's a newsletter subscription, right? So I think just being really conscious and cautious about how we work individually, what feels good to us. Russell will say, Claire is relentless with her energy. She absolutely exhausts me. And I just laugh. I'm just like, okay, that's cool. Like it's a compliment. I get it's a compliment, but it's also like, I couldn't do what she does. And I think he does more than me. So we just work differently. That's all.
That's really, really helpful. And just if I were to kind of recap some of the things that it seems like you've done really well or maybe contributed to you showing up is you treated it like a business, like you said. And I think a lot of people can treat it like a hobby, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you don't always show up for a hobby in the same way we show up for a job. So you did that, plus genuinely excited and interested. That's fuel. And then I imagine there's something with those. The moment you started Sparkle with Substack or Sparkle on Substack, you had it paid, and those 3 people that paid, there's something that does to your psyche that like is confirmation. And I imagine that maybe that helped fuel you on as well. It's kind of like, okay, someone wants this, I'm going to keep going. This is just me kind of recapping what I've heard. And maybe there's some principles here, I think, for other people. There's so I've seen in the chat, and keep sharing the questions in the chat. We're going to turn to them, and I might integrate some of those into the conversation right now. Some of them are around the technical things of Substack. We might not be able to get through all of those, but luckily Claire has a book and we have some other resources, but maybe we can touch on some of those. But let's see where we go from here. So Lindsay has a question. I'm curious about Claire's advice for niching down on a Substack, or for folks who aren't sure what their newsletter should be about. And you've kind of touched on this a little bit. I wonder if you have any other advice around someone who feels like they need to niche down or they're not sure.
Yeah, I just wonder where that comes from in us, Is that the internet dictating? Is that kind of the hangover from Instagram where you've got to have a niche? If you don't have a niche, people don't know what you are, and attention spans are short. It's like, no, you don't need a niche on Substack. You don't need that. You can be a blend. For me, it is a blend of our personal and professional selves, right? So the professional self is going to show up in a way where people know what to expect. And then the personal self is going to show some little parts, like, okay, like I've been doing this, like we got a new puppy and this is what's going on with that, so you can blend those things in and in a way that you feel really, really comfortable. There is something called sections within a Substack publication. So you could start a new section, subscribe everyone or subscribe no one. And when you do that, like you can literally be you could be as polar opposite as you want. So you could be like, okay, I've got a whole section about chocolate and chocolate cake, but I'm really passionate about fiction and I'm going to just write all of my fiction on Substack. People don't mind that because for the first time they're buying into the person, and that's how it's really felt from the beginning and still feels now. And so there's been this like really interesting shift as more content creators have come over. So Substack have been really upfront about this. They've invited people over. There's been an approach to TikTok stars, to YouTubers, and they've kind of said, like, this is a platform for you instead of you battling algorithms over there. And that's absolutely fine, isn't it? That is part of the sea of the internet, but we don't have to worry about that. Like those people have been doing that professional job of content creation for a long time. And if we're coming to it as our kind of authentic selves, our writerly selves, our creative selves, we can see what flows and there will be opportunities within that. So sometimes people will start with a name and then they realize the name isn't expansive enough. And there's this whole thing of like, oh, I need to change my name, but well, can I change my name? Because it's like you can do anything you want. You just take your readers with you. So giving yourself some space, I think for me, and like this is my advice, like I do think that this is really precious and possible to give yourself some space and time on the platform where it is just you. You know, it's not you and then you've invited your husband over, or, you know, my husband's very supportive. I don't mean it like that, but, you know, it's like just you. Like, what do you want to read? What do you want to write? Like, not telling your Instagram people about it or your ex-followers or whatever, like just showing up again on the blank page for the first time and seeing what happens, you know, giving yourself a month, 2 months, 3 months, all the good things are coming anyway. So having that little bit of precious time, I think, is really worth it. And then if you want to write about, you know, cats with 6 toes, you can do that. You literally just do anything you want.
That's great. I love that advice. And just to recap too, and especially if these are new terms for everyone. So you could start two separate Substacks like Claire did, or you can create sections within a current Substack. So it's a really great opportunity. And as me personally, also someone who came from the WordPress, MailChimp like days, like Substack makes this so much easier. Um, let's see, where do we go from here? There's so many questions. I wonder if we talk about community building a little bit, and this is, you mentioned this is one of the things you're most excited about, and you know we have a community here at London Writers Salon, and I kind of know what it means to build a community in this sense. But what does building community on Substack look like, and maybe how have you done that?
Yeah, so this was the really interesting thing. Like, I was most excited about the conversation, right? We live in rural Northumberland. I was like at home with my daughter, like fitting work in and around her. My husband had long COVID. Like, we couldn't put my daughter into daycare. So it was like everything had to happen around her. I was really lonely. So it's like,
Mm.
this is great. Like, if somebody wants to respond to something I've written, that just felt like the most magical thing. It's like, wow, like someone in Australia has found this post in the middle of the night. Like, I absolutely love that. And I really wanted to be there for everybody who wanted to respond, everybody who wanted to comment. And I also wanted to, for the people who were saying, and this was bubbling up a lot, I feel late to the party. Like, I feel like there's a party going on and and this was very personal, you know, you're front and center. And like, how do you do that? Because I just feel like nobody speaks to me here. And I'm like, okay, this is all good. This is fine. So I started a series of threads. I would start projects. So I did a massive one for International Women's Day, and we had like 67 women writers who just jumped on with that theme and were like, yeah, I'm going to write for International Women's Day. It was just really, really beautiful, very overwhelming, very, very beautiful. We did I did a collaborative project with an Australian writer mother where we just invited people to share in the comments other people's Substacks that they adored and loved, and that went nuts. It was just really popular. Um, and then I've got 24 Essay Club. So it was really interesting with 24 Essay Club. What was happening in me was I felt like everybody was distracted by all of the things that Substack were rolling out. So Substack have done so much in terms of what's technically possible on the platform. But what was happening in my community was, I don't know if I can be here anymore. This is too much to learn. Every time I come on, I feel overwhelmed. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing. There are all of these different things. I can't find what I'm looking for on the settings page. I've been here an hour already. And so the 24 Essays Club was the re-invitation to just write. So
Mm.
people kind of made a pledge, okay, we're going to try and write up to 24 essays in 2024. And they got a little badge that they can put at the bottom of their post. And then I share them. And we're going to do this, a new way of sharing that so that more and more people can find each other. But there are so many ways with it. And I think because it's my personal passion to have people feel part of something and part of the heartbeat of something. I've influenced other people. So I'll often get tagged and people are like, I'm so inspired by Claire. This is what I want to do. And this is what I've set up. And so it's a variation on a theme always. It'll be accountability, or it'll be like, okay, we're going to meet and we're going to write together. Or actually, like, does anybody else want to promote their books? Like, leave your book URLs in the comments. So people are just really finding their way with what that is. There's a really interesting opportunity with Substack chat. So chat is like a WhatsApp chat with just your subscribers, and you can set it up in a multitude of different ways. So I always had it so I was the only one that could start chats, and I would instigate them every Monday. So like back to the business, it's like, okay, it's Monday, guys. What are your questions? What are we all doing? So that felt like a really nice framework for everybody's week. And then over summer, I just gave it to my assistant and I said, I'm just going to let anybody who's a paid subscriber start a chat. Would you just keep an eye and make sure everyone's okay? And for me, like just letting that be organic and like letting go a bit of the control of it just felt scary, but really good. Like, it's okay. I don't have to read everything that's in there. These people have gathered and they might want to talk to each other. And that's a beautiful thing. So there are lots of ways with it. And again, it's back to what feels good to us and what feels good to do in terms of how people connect with our writing, because people can just wade in and be really mean. Like, that does happen. It is the internet. Like, it's only just started happening to me in the last few months, but there's something in our nervous systems where we've got to work through all of that stuff and make sure that we are fiercely, looking after our own space on Substack. We are making people feel safe and welcome and leaning into what we're creating. There's an energy outside of us as the publication host that is possible. And the tech side, just talk to me about that. I'll tell you what's the best way with it, because there are so many ways. But comments, threads, and in the chat, and then notes is just like the water cooler. If you were all in a shared office with loads of amazing writers and loads of amazing people who wanted to have sophisticated conversations, they're all at the water cooler. You can chat to them all, over some days on notes.
That's great. And again, I'm sure your book goes into all these things, and we have other forms. A lot of this is a visual learning thing if you've never been on the platform, but just going on it as a reader first and then maybe launching a publication just to play with it. It's a great way to explore these things.
It's really great to get the app.
Yeah.
Sorry, Matt. Like, I think if you're just starting and you're curious, just get the app, because the app is a lot more straightforward than the desktop version. And that way you can just lean into what it feels like to be a reader and be a member of some of the communities and some of the publications. And you can kind of get that bit first.
Yeah, really great advice. Just conscious of time, we've got lots of questions coming in. I wonder, maybe one final one for me, then we'll go into the chat a bit. What's been the hardest part about this Substack journey? Anything you've mentioned a bunch of things, like making sure your nervous system, you're looked after, you're finding joy in it. Is there anything else that you found difficult about this journey?
Yeah, I think just the permission slip, that whole piece of like, am I doing this on a worldwide platform? Is this what I'm doing? I do feel like we as humans have not caught up with what the internet has made possible. I haven't. I'm an elder millennial, so it's like the internet was like a thing when I was in sixth form. So that's like 70, I was age 17, 18, and it was chat rooms, but we all ignored it during university. Like, nobody had phones, so it's only been like 20 years or so where we have all of this potential and possibility at our fingertips. And sometimes leaning into that, like, is this okay? Like, is this going to feel good? When I first started in the first year, I would have already fallen asleep, and then my body would wake me up. And I would be like, is it okay that I've scheduled that post? Like, I don't write controversial stuff at all. But there was just something of that kind of safety mechanism clicking in. And I feel some of it with the book, because with a book, it feels more permanent, right? So it's Kickstarter and then it's finished. So you won't be able to get the book any other way. We don't have a plan unless we get a publisher, which would be awesome. But, we're just kind of Kickstarter and done. But there's something about when I start physically sending the books out into the world that I'm just not okay about. Like, I just don't feel okay about it because it feels huge. It's not really. Like, people might leave it on a shelf for a year, maybe longer. I don't know. Other people might love it. Some other people might not agree with what we've said in there. I don't know, but it's all the unknowns. And I think navigating that and holding people in that also helps calm my nervous system in that, feeling connected to other groups of people who are showing up and making things happen. It's very, very exciting. So I think all in all, if I need to unplug, do those digital detoxes, go offline for a week at a time, take the weekends off, delete the apps from my phone, like I do those things. And I think that I'm still learning what it means to better understand that recalibration piece in myself, because so much creativity is born there, yet we're so resistant. We don't want to delete the apps, or maybe we should just, but actually for me, and I think for a lot of the people I mentor, that is the magic, right? If you can just unplug and take yourself out of it all and just slow everything down, come back to center, then that confidence comes back and you're like, okay, I've got this.
That's really helpful, Claire. And what you've talked about, so Substack's a really great tool to put your words out there, but with that comes the mental part of that, what it means to put your words out there to the internet. So you've touched on what I feel like what we hear a lot in this community is really the mental part of this, the psychological part, and sticking with it and putting yourself out there. So I really appreciate you speaking to all of these things. So there's some questions coming in, and some I think we've already touched on. So I'm just going to try to review as best as possible. So Otter had a question around wanting to write under one step Substack or needing several. And Tom had a similar question. Do people have, lots of people have two Substacks? So we mentioned sections is a good way you can approach that. Do you have a sense on what might be the case for having a separate Substack versus just doing it under sections?
Yeah, I think that if you're building two sets of audiences, you're asking them to choose. Are they going to choose both publications? Do you want them to? So getting to know who your ideal reader is, knowing that person and knowing that avatar, if you like. So it's more kind of business and marketing speak, but knowing who you're writing for. And then are they going to subscribe to both? And if they are, then why do you need both? So really kind of getting into some of that work. With Sparkle, it felt like an expansive piece, right? So it felt like there were people, and I knew this because I had a MailChimp mailing list of 300 and I imported that into Creatively Conscious. And it felt like every time I did the Stay Creative on Substack posts, there was this kind of niggling voice of like, there are lots of people that really don't care about Substack, will probably never go on there. Like they're very happy, they've got full-time jobs, they're busy with their kids, they've got Instagram. Like Substack is just the place that I send my newsletter from, and the passion needed a new place to live. So it just felt like it spilled over. And then for the summit, we also had a separate Substack for the summit. Now, it's not something that Substack promote, but they were cool with it. I wrote to them and they were like, yeah, this is all good. So that felt like for clarity, the summit needed that kind of, it needed to be set up in that way. I also used to host a space for mothers called Company of Two. So primarily it was a podcast, but we also had guest post slots there. And it felt like, again, the branding and the invite was like a space for mothers to feel safe. Like it wasn't for anybody else, it was for mothers. So that felt really important that it had its own separate space. If you imagine, if you do want to start a podcast and how that sits within your publication, and then that can be pulled out, you can pull the RSS feed out to Spotify and Apple and anywhere else people get their podcasts. So does that feel right? So giving yourself enough space to lean into the Substack that you've got and to claim all of those parts of yourself without kind of being pressured to niche. You can toggle between them, right? So when you start a new Substack, you can just toggle on the dashboard. So that's what I do. I have one for a client that's a completely separate login, but I've added myself as admin. So that means, again, I can just toggle between that one. And that one is really nothing to do with me. It's very like place specific Substack. So it needed to be a separate Substack. So yeah, it's really interesting. I think ultimately you are the author. So, your author name should be the name that we see in notes, and then the publications can sit under that. But I think sometimes people are too quick to start another one. And I see this a lot. They'll start another one and then be like, oh no, I didn't mean to do that actually. Like that's not feeling so good. But they wouldn't have known, I guess, unless they'd started it. And these are people that I gave advice to as well. So sometimes we just got to do it. The sections thing works really well, and you can organize your Substack so well using the navigation bar, using the different kind of groupings on the homepage. If you have a look at both of mine, you'll see how I've done that. And we can grow into that publication space. But if the energy is huge and you have time for a second Substack and you're happy to kind of split your audience or be asking audiences to subscribe to both, then give it a go, do it, see if it
Mm.
feels good.
Yeah, that's great perspective. And also, I mean, a lot of where I see a lot of people getting stuck is they're waiting for the perfect answer to emerge before they start. And the good news is you can change things. We've seen people like Catherine May and others totally rebrand their
Yeah.
Substacks.
Yeah.
You mentioned importing. I mean, if you decide actually I want to consolidate into this into one, you could just import the one group into another. So don't let making it perfect stop you from starting, because the way will emerge as you go, and there's very little that you can't like change.
Yeah,
That's
it's
my
such good
perspective.
advice. Yeah, it's so true, Matt. And I think it's the nervous system piece again. Like a lot of my one-to-ones, they're definitely not going to import their mailing list, and then 3 4 months later they import their mailing list, and they just change the way their ecosystem works, because Substack offers us such brilliant opportunities to grow. And also, it's not, I don't really want to slate mailing list providers, and Substack is not a mailing list provider, it's a newsletter platform. But what a lot of people are doing with mailing list providers is sending newsletters, and they're not really making the most out of segmentation and that sort of thing. And so
Mm.
once people start to understand you're not going to miss anything by leaving that platform, in fact, you're going to save money, then they're like, oh, okay, well, I'll just do that then. But there's the getting ready piece of that, isn't there?
Yeah, that's great. So there's some questions around some of the technical aspects, and one
Mhm.
of them, Karen had a question around comment moderation. So, and maybe just a lay of the land. So you're a person, you're an author, you can have multiple Substacks. Within each Substack, you can have multiple sections. You can create posts on each publication. A post can be text, video, audio, all different sorts of things. And then there's a comment section, which I believe you can probably turn on and off. So all that to say, Karen had a question around comment moderation. Does Substack manage that and do any filtering, or is that just all on you?
It's all on you, yeah. So I mean, it's been amazingly breezy and lovely for the longest time. And then a lot of the time, what I want to say is that if someone is slightly abrasive and it's not something that I'm used to sort of reading in my comments section, I will always give someone the benefit of the doubt. Um, if sometimes there's the most logical explanation, like my friend had one, and she knew who to write to kind of just check in, and the guy's got Alzheimer's, but the wording was like strange, so sometimes there is a logical explanation. I think that it's hard, because it's us being open to whatever people want to bring into our space. And that's where I think that when we're really clear about what this is why, I mean, I've told this story a lot, but the reason I called it Sparkle on Substack is because I knew it was going to put people off, like, honestly. So it was self-preservation for sure, but it was also like, there's going to be an avatar of a person. There's going to be a profile of a person that would literally rather not. They would rather not be connected to anything sparkly, or anyone, in the northeast of England that is just like a Care Bear talking to them about Substack. Like, that's just not what they're up for. Like, so it's subtle, and it was subtle, but it's also sophisticated. And when I'm writing to people, people will say, oh, you're so approachable. I am, but also, if I need to protect my space, I will, So if that means that I have to remove somebody, you can do that. You can unsubscribe someone, you can refund someone, you can do all the things, you can mute people. You can do all the things, but it is all on you. And in the book, Russell talks about it. There was some controversy in notes around who Substack were allowing to monetize in terms of the flavor of what was going on. And it was a whole big thing. And Russell has written about it in the book, and he wanted to have his say about that. And for me, I just feel like anywhere on the internet, there is going to be the odd thing that you might have to deal with. It's not very often. I feel like it makes us stronger about what we want to show up and do for people in the world. And we just kind of have to let that go and know that that energy has probably been spread a lot of different places. It's not really about us. It's either what's going on with that person, or they've just done a big shower of different things across different Substacks, and we shouldn't let it
Yeah.
ruin our day. That said, it's hard to get used to at first, and I feel like I'm only just there with it. So yeah, it's worth it
Yeah.
though, guys. It's worth it.
Yeah, the best advice I've heard is people treat their comment section like it's their house.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if someone's doing something in your house, you'd be like, leave. Like,
You need to
and
leave. Yeah.
you can show people the door or mute them or let them
Mm-hmm.
out. But if they're not going to treat this like respectful, this is my house, then they don't belong here.
Yeah.
Um, so let's see so Katie wants to know, do you still engage with social media in other places, or have you found that Substack is all you need to find your readers and engage?
Yeah, so I have what I call, I choose two. So with Substack, it's like 95% of my energy, and then I'll dip in and out of Instagram. So for me, it felt like there's an opportunity to show more of who I am because of the video element that Instagram gives us. So I'm not trying to grow a profile on Instagram. I'm just trying to be more of a shop window for who I am in the world, like how I run my business. If people are Substack curious, they find me there because it's kind of branded up that I've got Substack. And then I'll do a little bit on LinkedIn because lots of people who are kind of colleagues are using LinkedIn a lot. And so I like to kind of just show up there like maybe once every other week, and I'll just do a post, and then I'll see who's, tagged or commented or sent me a message or whatever. And I just sort of try and stay having a little bit of a presence on there. But in terms of where we are with Substack and what's possible, they haven't released any stats recently, but it used to be that there was around about 18,000 writers and about 40 million readers. So in terms of what's possible for our writery selves, and also will be readers as well, it just feels like a really good opportunity. I was at a podcast recording with the head of UK partnerships, UK and European partnerships, Farah Store, earlier in the
Yeah.
year. Emma Gannon interviewed her, so you can listen to that over on Emma's Substack. And she was saying, we're still in at the ground floor, guys. Like, this is it. Like, let's go. This is what we predict with Substack. This is what we think is going to happen. But in terms of you growing your community, you growing your readership, you setting up your Substack system so that Substack helps you to grow, because recommendations are a really big part of that. Now's the time, so there's still time, and we've got time, and leaning into that nervous system piece of you're not too late and it's okay. Like, we can do this here. Over on the social media platforms, I feel like it's like, it's your choice. If you have a good time there, if you feel plugged into a community and you feel supported, if it's playful, sometimes it is playful to, wrap some music around some slow-lived content. I like doing that. It's nice. Then yeah, but I think, for me as a creative entrepreneur, when I started tracking my time and how long things were taking, I was very surprised at how long Instagram takes of my time. And it does take it, right? Like, I don't feel I'm willingly giving that. I feel like I'm like, oh, I've just, been on Instagram. It's like, no, this is like hours and hours and hours in your week. So if you redirect that to writing, Substack's made me a better writer. So that's the place, right? That's the place for me to keep writing, keep honing my craft, keep caring about editing, keep working with different colleagues, keep discovering new members that I want to kind of have a cup of tea with in real life. So yeah, I just
Yeah.
love it. I'm so passionate about it. So yeah, Substack all
It's
the way.
it's yeah, it's palpable. We can feel it. And one of the things it reminded me, one of the things that we instruct for people when we have a Start Your Substack 4-week thing where we take people through it, is to make it so you win no matter what. Meaning, like, you have to, if this gives you creative growth and like gives you a forum to express yourself, like, great. Like, no external measurement. You don't need to achieve any other external measurement for you to win personally. And so that being a really good starting place. And that's what it seems like you've done really well, Claire.
I love it. Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Maybe a couple more questions, and then we're gonna have to wrap up. And luckily, you've got a whole book on this. So Squid wants to know: I heard Substack doesn't really show up on Google searches as much as other platforms. Is that true, or do you have any
I mean,
insight into that?
mine's plugged into the Google Search Console, so I sound like I know what I'm talking about. That was just what I was told to do. You plug it in, and I had a guest come into my membership that talked about SEO, and I said, I feel like I really don't know what I've never quite with WordPress, it used to be to turn all buttons green. I could never turn the buttons green. There was too much free flow in there. But she was saying what you're doing is actually amazing for SEO. So it's all good. So her take on it as an SEO expert was SEO changes all the time and it's all good. You can see in your stats where your subscribers are coming from. And this is a really interesting thing, isn't it? About what are people searching Google for? And then knowing what they might be searching Google for, like, is that going to filter people into your Substack space? It definitely does with mine. Obviously, I've set myself up on YouTube as well. I've got a bit of a presence there, but it depends what. I guess it's back to the niche and knowing yourself and knowing what people might be searching for. But yeah, you can plug it into Google Search Console. And my advice from the expert that I brought in was we're all doing enough, and it's just the internet and it changes all the time.
Yeah, that's great. There's a couple questions here around where Substack sits alongside a blog or alongside something like Medium. And maybe you have a good answer for this. I mean, with Medium, I don't know if you have any perspective on Medium. It's kind of a very similar thing. I think Medium started implementing a chance for people to subscribe, so like a newsletter function, but it's more of like a platform for writing first, a newsletter second, whereas Substack's like a newsletter first and like a landing page for your writing second. But I don't know if you'd have a more correct view of that.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of conversations and I read a lot of conversations in the early days because I wanted to understand what Medium was, but I've never been on there, like never.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I think from what I understand from the people that do both, right? So there are definitely some people that educate on Medium and educate on Substack. And for the people that educate about Medium, they're trying to help people go viral on Medium. Whereas we're not trying for that on Substack. We're trying to kind of convert free readers into paid subscribers if we're paywalling our work. That said, you can run Substack as a blog. You just simply don't email out your posts, right? So you can publish them to your Substack website. And people have taken it to an even further level where they've got their author website as Substack. You can totally do that. So you could just literally delete out anything else you've got as your author website. You can do that and just have it all in Substack. So because the functionality is so good. So there are a few times that I've experimented with that function where I've not emailed it out, but the views are really, really small. Ideally, Substack want us to be emailing out our posts and then they're going to show it to more people. It's going to end up on the explore page or whatever else. But you can definitely do that. And you could do that with the pieces that you may be feeling a little bit more vulnerable about, or maybe you're kind of testing something new and it'll just publish to the Substack website. And if someone was to head over to your profile, they'd find it. So you can run it blog style, you can email stuff out, you can turn the comments section off, you can have the comments just for paid subscribers, you can put paywalls in. There are so many ways with the functionality, but I think, like you say, you've got this beautiful 4-week intro where people kind of get to know themselves with Substack. And I think that is it. I've seen people be like, oh, why can't it be more like Medium? It's like, well, because there's Medium. Like, I don't get it. I'm just like, it can't be more like Medium because it's Substack. Like, I don't know. But like I said, I haven't been on there. And I think some people still really love Medium. So yeah, there's someone posted the other day and a post had made them $18,000 one post. I was like, oh, wow, that's an interesting thing. But yeah, I don't know a huge amount about it.
Yeah. Yeah. They're almost like different places to play. It's like, do I choose Twitter or Instagram? Like maybe both, but maybe you're just going on one. Like they're different strategies, different platforms. However, if it was me and if someone's considering starting a blog, today, I started a blog like 10 years ago. I wouldn't do it the way I did it. I wouldn't do it on WordPress today. I'd probably do it on Substack or Medium. I probably wouldn't do WordPress or blog at all. That's my take on where the
and how
blog
things have
ecosystem
moved
sits.
on. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Claire, we're lots more questions. I'm sure. I really apologize if we didn't get to your question, everyone. But luckily, Claire, you've got your book out. You also have a masterclass, also, which I think is included in one of those tiers of the Kickstarter campaign.
So
is that right?
with the Kickstarter, this again is all Russell, and so it's all tiered rewards, I guess. So for
Yeah.
you kind of pledging a certain amount, you can come to something called the Secrets of Substack Bestsellers Masterclass with Russell and I. So it's a 2-hour class, and we've
Awesome.
already planned it, and we've basically pulled everything that we know plus everything that we know from other Substack bestsellers that we've supported into one class, and the replay will be available. So you can get that on Kickstarter. It'll also be available in my Diamond membership as well. So if you wanted to like know more and work with me more one-to-one, so this is a membership where I work with people in the DMs. So we have DMs on Substack, which is such a beautiful thing. But as soon as they came in, I was terrified. I was like, my goodness, I cannot keep up with all the questions in all the portals. So I had to make DMs for paid subscribers only, which was actually great. It was a great thing. So
That's
again, the
wonderful.
nervous system piece, what's going to happen? No, it's fine. So Diamond members can DM me 5 days a week for a year. So that's the thing there. So the class will be in there, or you can come along live or get the replay with the Kickstarter. The book, yeah, it's, you can get ebook or you can get the physical copy anywhere in the world. It'll ship. And yeah, I think that's it. But I mean, I am genuinely really approachable. So if you want to, connect on my Instagram, it's creatively.conscious. If you want to, connect in notes, I'd love to kind of share more in the notes network, because then more people can learn from your questions. So if you do have questions, just at me over there and I can chat some more, and I can loop in. I know Lindsay is already connected with me on there,
Yeah.
but I don't think I've got you on there yet, Matt. So we'll have to connect in and just kind of continue the conversation maybe.
For sure. And yeah, Lindsay, thank you for sharing the links to the Kickstarter, the book, and the masterclass. Claire, thank you so much for your insights, your time, your wisdom. This is obviously such a deep area to explore, and we're really grateful for you helping us explore it. So hopefully all of you can go deeper with Claire on those things. And also we are doing a 4-week start your Substack sprint with Lindsay. So if you want a little more hand-holding, you want to do it with some other writers in the community, that starts September 4th. So we'll share some more information about that as well. Well, thank you so much, Claire, for being here. Actually, I'd love to invite everyone, if you would care to unmute yourself. Love to give Claire a round of applause for her energy, for her wisdom, for everything. So all right, let's give Claire
You
what we got. Thank you,
guys,
Claire.
you guys are so lush.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It's lovely to connect to you all.
Thank you, Claire.
Cute.
Good evening.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And we'll share the recording with you after this. We'll also put it on our member portal. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Claire. All right.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.